So just starting with the very basics, like the word artificial intelligence actually just refers to a set of instructions that a software executes. It often encompasses a lot of things, and different people mean different things, but you can just think of it as a software executing a certain like classic rule-based system is already artificial intelligence. And within this big block, there are specifics, concepts that I'm going to briefly explain, which are more attractive or more like recent that we've heard more recently. But really, artificial intelligence has been existing since the 90s or even earlier. The kind of four key concepts that you should remember is what are the differences between machine learning, deep learning, generative AI, and LLMs. Going one by one, machine learning is, in simple terms, the idea of pattern matching. So you have a lot of data, you learn how like patterns within this data, and you use that to apply it to future data. For example, you want to understand whether a transaction in the bank is fraudulent or not. You can use rules, you can learn from past transactions, and you can create kind of machine learning algorithms that will help you define what is fraud and what is not fraud. And one of the ways to do it is with deep learning. Like machine learning, you can think of it as a like a superset of many different type of algorithms. And within this, they can be like either supervised learning, which means that you have data and a label. So for example, you have the transactions and you have whether they are fraudulent or not, and then you try to learn that. Or you have non-labeled data in which you try to just group different box of transactions. Those are two types of machine learning. Deep learning is a similar, like it's a type of machine learning that works with neural networks. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this concept, but that is basically deep learning is a type of machine learning that leverages same a lot of transactions, learn the relationship between what is the input and what generates the output to replicate that for future transactions. This started in, let's say, 2010, started growing quite a lot. So already quite a few time ago. And that is why you will hear companies saying AI power in 2012, meaning AI didn't start with ChatGPT. But there is a big difference with generative AI that really picked up after ChatGPT was released in 2022. The main difference is that whereas traditional deep learning was just recognizing historical patterns and then applying it to new scenarios, generative AI is able to create content. So it's able to create images, able to create text, music, etc. And the way it does it is by trying to generate something and then learning whether that is the right thing to generate or not, and reusing that to learn how to learn, essentially. And one part of generative AI, which we will hear the most about, is LLM, which means large language models, which is basically text generation. So when you talk to ChatGPT, what it's going to do is going to convert your word into a vector, meaning like a mathematical representation of your input, and it's going to generate an answer. And that is why it's called generative AI. I know this is a bit technical, so not trying to make you understand like all the technicalities, but just I think the key message here is machine learning existed since 20 years. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning, and generative AI is a subset of deep learning that is able to generate context. What we now hear a lot about, starting last year, is agentic AI. Agentic AI is basically using generative AI and leveraging the generative AI output to do specific tasks. So, for example, ChatGPT is able to talk to you, but it's not going to send an email for you. That is what agentic AI wants to do. So it's going to leverage ChatGPT applications to generate content, but then it's going to be able to take decisions, to schedule meetings, to send emails, to, let's say, call someone. And if you have a voice agent, it's going to be able to replace a contact center type of application. And that is what really will drive adoption at the enterprise level, because ChatGPT is great for individual productivity. But if you want to actually leverage that at scale in companies, you need to not only be able to generate content, but you need to take actions. And that is why agentic AI is catching so much attention. Small note on AGI. This stands for artificial general intelligence, and this is what you will see OpenAI and all of this trying to saying that they try to do. The idea is to replicate what the human thinks. This is very far, and this is just a futuristic look that we will not have a look at the short term or medium term, because we don't see this as having an impact in the coming few years. And that is why kind of all the attention right now is on agentic AI. I will just briefly introduce the framework. The way that we are breaking down AI space. So framework, we have 5 layers. So hardware layer, infrastructure layer, model layer, platform, and application. Hardware, pretty clear. So it's the microchips, is the server racks, is the cooling mechanisms, everything that is physical, which powers the infrastructure layer, which this would be, and maybe easier to show it just with the player so you have a view. We'll just So hardware would be the Nvidia of this world, Intel, AMD, etc. And you have more niche players in networking, cooling, sensors, etc. At the infrastructure layer, this is really who has the data centers that integrate all the hardware components to provide computing power. This could be the hyperscalers, Google, Amazon, Microsoft. It could be AI clouds. So it's Google, Amazon, Microsoft, but specialize in AI. These are called neo clouds. Or it can be databases that have their own data centers, or they can use other neo clouds or hyperscalers data centers. That's the infra layer. Model is really those very huge language models or foundational models that are the ones that we were talking about, generative AI generating content. These are the models that actually generate content. As a small note, so OpenAI, Anthropic, huge, fast growing companies, Llama of Facebook, Gemini of Google, Grok of Twitter or the X, and then there's Mistral AI, which is the French one, and there's DeepSeek, which is the Chinese one. Platform layer means all the tools that are tailored to developers. So not end users, but developers. So it can be app building tools, it can be deployment, observability, etc. Or it can be AI platforms like node code platforms like N8N, Palantir, Alteryx, etc. that can either be used by end users at the application layer or developers to develop applications. And then at the application layer, which is where we will spend the most time on, it will be mainly vertical and horizontal software. And here you will have an unlimited amount of companies. Few things that we are seeing in terms of dynamics is hardware is scarce. So model and infrastructure players are building partnerships with hardware players to ensure that they have enough chips. So you see there's the OpenAI deal with AMD yesterday or a couple of days ago, and there's many like this. Second, infrastructure or cloud players are going upwards. So you see them playing at infra but there are also some of them building their own models, and they have their platform. You can think about, for example, AWS has the cloud, so is at the infrastructure layer, but they also have AWS SageMaker, which is a platform for developers to develop applications. So you see them playing at many segments. And even, for example, model and platform are developing their own application. OpenAI, they have GPT, which is the model, and then they create their own application, which is the chat interface. So these are a few dynamics that we wanted to highlight here. So hardware is a one-time buy-in, although now, for example, NVIDIA is looking at leasing chips, but historically it has been like a one-time fee. Infrastructure layer is a recurrent type of business, usually multi-year type of contracts, quite sticky, hard to move. For example, Amazon is well known for being super easy to go in Amazon Cloud, but super hard to get out. Model layer, it's a pay per use. So every time you call at enterprise level, if you, for example, develop an application on top of the model of ChatGPT, you pay per use. So every time you interact with the model, you will pay a few cents. And then at platform and application layer, this, like we have seen in our projects, there's a mix of pricing models. Historically, at application, we had seen SaaS being mainly seat-based. Now we see a transition towards hybrid models in which you have seat-based and you also have AI usage-based. And the reason for this is that if you only have usage-based, you will have a super cyclical revenue stream, because if there's a market downturn, there will be less consumption and your revenue will decrease. So the ideal pricing model is actually to have a mix between seat-based and AI consumption on top. And this can be, for example, you have your SAP license, and every time you use the AI copilot to help you automate things in SAP, you'll pay per use on that AI copilot. If we look at attractiveness and who buys what, we will not see VC often at hardware level. You will already see some PEs, for example, KKR acquiring energy efficient data center cooling solution. At infra, we have a lot of hyperscalers, so publicly listed companies, a few infrastructure private equities, and a few VCs that are looking more at the database side. Model very similar. Platform, we see a bit of everything, although VC is more late stage, and application we see a mix of everything as well. And just on the left, we categorize a bit what are the needs of capital, barriers of entry, and commoditization risk across the different layers. Main message being hardware is super capital intensive, and as you go up, you require less capital. However, barriers of entry are therefore the reverse, and commoditization is higher at the hardware layer, but less so at the application or platform. Quickly on what can you use AI for, and here I will keep it super simple. There are three ways you can use AI for. Either to generate new revenue, so you can target new customers, you can upsell, you can cross-sell, you can the same type of customers but of different sizes, etc. So this is revenue generating AI. Second, AI as a differentiator. I'm not winning more money, but my product is better because it has AI, so it strengthens my right to win, and now I'm better than competitors. Third, internally, I can use AI to be more efficient, to reduce my cost basis, to be able to do more in less time, etc. So just to have in mind, internal, external, you can do revenue generating or differentiator. AI will impact most, if not all, industries within B2B. That does not mean that existing SaaS vendors are going to die. That might mean that they need to adapt what they do. And there's some industries where this disruption will mean new players taking the place of existings, and there's other segments that will mean that existing players will either expand the functionalities to these new AI capabilities, or new AI players will complement existing players. And this will happen at different stages. So right now, we are already seeing a lot of disruption in marketing automation, project management, contact center, DevOps, etc. In 3 to 5 years, we expect industries like insurtech, a few in office of the CFO, GRC, etc., to be disrupted or change the way they work. In a few more years, 5+, we see some like treasury management or school management that are more complex or more regulated to be impacted, and core banking, capital markets, as expected, a bit like the old guys that will take a bit more time to adopt, similar to construction and others. Maybe just if I had to summarize and resume what you should stay in your head with, AI existed for a long time. What is really new is generative AI, the ability to create new content. Agentic AI is leveraging those capabilities to actually do actions with it. That's the first message. Second, in your mind, to have a standard framework, hardware, infrastructure, model, platform, and application. And then understanding that there's going to be different timelines for the different industries to be disrupted, that some will mean that the incumbent players, existing players, will be disrupted, and some they will just either complement or expand their scope that they currently do. This is the first of 3 sessions. So the idea was really to start by the basics, framework, evolution, history, and just a disruption timeline. In the next ones, we will make a zoom on agentic AI, and potentially we will do a bit more on the disruption risk as well to be discussed.